Well, what does the future hold for higher education in a post-COVID world? Here to talk about the impacts of the pandemic on college admissions and more, Interim Chancellor of UMass Dartmouth, Dr. Mark Fuller. Doctor, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
I wanted to start off by talking about admissions. What impact has COVID had on the number of prospective students applying to UMass Dartmouth?
You know, what's interesting is that we're actually seeing a resurgence at all of the UMass campuses related to enrollments. We expect to be returning to sort of pre-pandemic levels, if you will, of in-person student populations for the fall.
That is certainly good news. Could you just sort of take me back to this time in 2020? What were you seeing last year as we started to navigate how this pandemic was going to impact all of us, particularly students on college campuses?
Well, there was so much uncertainty about how we were going to deal with the various facets of the on-campus experience. Now, clearly, we were very innovative and flexible in addressing those. We, just like we're doing right now, we figured out ways to do remote learning, as many universities did across the nation, but there's really no substitute for many of the aspects of the in-person learning experience. And so last year, even though all of the universities nationally did, I think, a great job trying to deliver the education during the pandemic, it isn't the same. And so we're very, very excited to be able to get students back on campus safely and in in-person learning experiences.
I understand UMass has made the decision to require vaccination for students and faculty returning to campus this fall. Is that because you really want to make sure that you can have that safe in-person learning experience?
Yeah, we're requiring all students to get vaccinated because we want them to have that sort of learning experience. And we know that obviously following the science, vaccinations are the way to make that happen. We're very careful to follow the public health guidelines, and we've done an excellent job this year with our own health department and cooperating with county public health officials. Our incident rate has been much lower, actually, than the region that we're in. And so we feel very confident that we'll be able to offer a safe learning experience, again, following the science.
On the topic of admissions, you're doing something this Sunday called Instant Decision Day. For those of us who might not have heard of it, including myself, can you tell us what it is and why UMass has chosen to do this?
Well, it's not all that surprising that you haven't heard about it, because this is actually the first time this year that we've done Instant Decision Day as well. And so this is our second one. Our first one was in April. And as a person, my daughter is actually a senior in high school and is doing the same college choosing process that many of the families and students are doing that are applying to UMass Dartmouth. And I think the pandemic has obviously put a bit of a crimp on the students' abilities to experience the campus, even though we're doing campus tours and we do have small groups coming through, and that has been happening. We want to be as flexible as possible because we know we're such an economic engine of change for students and we have such an impact on young lives. We wanted to be as flexible as possible for students and families to get access to this great university. And so an Instant Decision Day allows the students to come in through Zoom and basically get admitted that same day. They pre-apply, they can get admitted that same day, they can get a financial aid decision that same day. It's almost a one-stop shop trying to facilitate a nice pathway into the university.
That is pretty cool. Do you know how many students will be admitted on Sunday?
We're not sure yet. The session that we ran for the first time in April had about a little over 30 students. We try to keep it reasonably small so that they can talk with the counselors at the session. We anticipate another 30-odd students there, and the admission counselors will have an opportunity to meet and talk with each of those students. So obviously you can't run one necessarily with 300 people in it, so we do try to keep them more intimate.
Very cool. You took over as Interim Chancellor in January. What's it been like stepping into this role in the midst of the ongoing COVID crisis?
Well, it's been a bit of an adventure. The university is great, so I'm excited to serve the system and the university as Chancellor at UMass Dartmouth. But I will admit it's been a bit of a wind tunnel as we've tried to navigate the pandemic and try to determine, again, how to reopen in the fall, and we've done that. We also had to figure out how we're going to do graduation, because we really want to give all of these students an opportunity for them to celebrate along with their families during graduation. So we delayed graduation by a month, and we're actually doing graduations for the class of 2020 on one day in 3 separate sessions. And we're doing a graduation ceremony for the class of 2021 the next day in 3 separate sessions, using all the safety precautions, social distance. We limit the number of guests per student, et cetera.
Now, I know you have interim in front of your title. Any interest in getting rid of that and becoming the chancellor full time?
Well, I love the university. I'm a first generation college student myself, and I appreciate the mission that all the state universities, but I think in particular UMass Dartmouth has. It's sort of meeting the needs and providing that opportunity for people that might not otherwise have access to higher education to get that. So I'll say it this way, I'll be here as long as they'll have me. I'm interested in the position, and I'm having fun, even though, as you pointed out, it's been an interesting time to start in the midst of a pandemic.
Absolutely. We talked about sort of the short-term impacts on admission, virtual learning. What long-term impacts do you think COVID will have on colleges and universities?
Well, if there's a silver lining to any of this, it's that I think we've become more adept at using technology to meet learning objectives. And so you can imagine if we have, a sizable commuter population, for example, that doing office hours sometimes in the evening might be better facilitated by Zoom. And so that becomes something where we can adopt the technology for specific reasons. Again, people send their kids to an in-residence educational facility for a reason. There's social development clearly that occurs in college as well, and you can't replace that with technology in many cases. And so we're looking at finding ways to use technology to really leverage the learning experience, and I think there are ways to do that.
Dr. Fuller, is there anything else that you'd like to let our viewers know at this time?
Get vaccinated. That's important. The more of us are vaccinated, the more we can return to normal. And if you're in the looking for a college, I'd advise you to look at UMass Dartmouth. It's a place on the rise.
Interim Chancellor of UMass Dartmouth, Dr. Mark Fuller, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.